So, probably a pretty good chance you haven't heard about this one. It is a movie called My Son Hunter. Uh, Started picking up some buzz in some of the right wing circles. And right now, it's actually audience wise doing pretty good on Rotten Tomatoes. And it's one of those ones the critics are going to essentially refuse to acknowledge exists. So, I guess the best way to look at this is to break it down as a movie and break it down as a political missive, I guess. Uh, this is a movie about essentially known information about Hunter Biden, stuff that's already been in the news and stuff that's been leaked from the various stuff from his laptops. Now, so it's a interesting start. Uh, I'd say about the first quarter to a third of the movie is kind of jaw dropping. So I guess to put you in my mindset, how I would why I would say this. So I've seen some of the videos that have come off of Hunter's laptops, and they show the various ones with him smoking crack and other smokables. And it's really weird because you'll see him uh, essentially taking hits and staring into the camera. And then, as the effects taking hold, he's just continuing to stare at the camera. And really, to me, these images are kind of haunting. Um, it gives me the impression, and this is reality, by the way, not the movie. Uh, it gives me the impression of somebody who's gone through something really bad. I mean, like ultimate bad. And it makes you wonder about what brings a person to this point. I mean, yeah, okay, when you feel bad, you drown your sorrows in some way. And obviously, he's been going on a long stint of this kind of stuff. But then to record it, to what end? It really gives me this whole cry for, I mean, the literal cry for help. So uh, that's kind of the feeling I've had, just my personal grab on Hunter Biden himself. So when you get into the first, like I said, about quarter to a third of the movie, you're essentially dealing with Hunter having a binge night, and uh, it does a this part of the movie does a pretty good job. It you're getting kind of a uh, Wolf of Wall Street vibe, and almost a little bit of a vibe like the Great Short or the Big Short, excuse me, where you kind of have a combination of a little bit of fourth wall breaking, uh, a little bit of so explain what's going on, and just this incredible drug fueled rampage that's in progress, and it is really done well. And so what ends up happening, and from here, I'm spoiling, but I mean, if you're up on current events, you should be nothing in here should be that much of a giveaway. I mean, it's essentially taking what we already know from current events and dramatizing and kind of filling in some of the holes. So, in this early part, the character Hunter ends up meeting up with uh, a high end stripper. And see here, real quick. Yeah, Lawrence Fox plays Hunter Biden, and definitely would say he did a really good job at this part. His writing was good. His acting was good. It's really easy to believe uh, that you're kind of in his shoes. You believe what he's doing. Well, anyways, he meets up with this high end stripper and ends up kind of telling his story. And this part is really good because he's talking about the real life things that happened to Hunter Biden. Um, at very young, his mom and his brother are killed in a car wreck. Uh, essentially, kind of ruins his happy place for a long time. And then he's kind of in this position where he's kind of content to be the black sheep of the family. It's like, okay, nothing's expected of him, and he's just basically a goof, and nobody cares. And his older brother Bo is the one that's essentially carrying on the family business, and he dies of cancer. And then all of a sudden, it all switches over to everyone depending on Hunter to do these things. And so he talks about essentially being woefully inadequate to what they're asking him to do. And it's it really makes you feel bad for him. You really empathize with the position he's in, or it's like he didn't ask for any of this, and now he's here, and now things are starting to blow up in his face because it's harder to cover tracks when you're doing kind of things like this behind the lines, etc., etc. Um, and so yeah, so leave the description there, and I'll come back. Looking at it politically next. But then the movie starts to fall apart. Um, so they have a part where essentially he has to kind of sober himself. I mean, he's coming out of this absolute bender of a party, and he's being told he's got a meeting, and it's early in the morning, and it turns out uh, Joe Biden's there to meet with him, and they're there to discuss, how bad is this laptop thing? What's all on there? What do we need to do, et cetera, et cetera. And oh boy, that it was so well written up to this point that it just it's almost like getting hit with a frying pan, or it's like um, Joe Biden is played uh, comedically over the top. So I mean, they take a lot of things he's actually said and done in public, and they mold him into his character. So you could consider like every gaffe you've ever seen Joe Biden do in the last 2 years crammed into a 5 minute scene. Uh, I mean, any of the things he says are fully believable, but you can't. It's harder to buy that his character is so disheveled that he's almost out of touch with the reality of things are going. So on one hand, they're expecting you to believe he's the big boss masterminding this, but at the same time, um, he's basically retelling the corn pop story and other things like that. And the musical track at this point is this uh, kind of absurdist, uh, comical, almost circus-like music, and it's not very subtle. And so essentially they're playing it as a total goof, and it really, I mean, here you had this you're strongly invested in Hunter, you're feeling horrible for him, you're very empathetic with everything that's going on, and then all of a sudden they kind of yank you out and go, and it's like, okay, now it's not serious anymore, it's just goofy. And it's like, ugh. And at the same time, and so the entire, and they meet in the back of a car, and it's a method of delivering exposition, and it goes way too long. um the Acting, I'm not necessarily knocking the actor who played Joe Biden. Um, he may have been doing a really good job. I don't think it was written very well. And then they enter. So here you have this one scene of exposition. Meanwhile, it pops back, and the stripper is kind of hanging out with Hunter's bodyguard. And so she's gotten a lot of this story, and she's trying to, at this point, because right when the meeting starts, she realizes, holy crap, that's Joe Biden, so that must be his son. And then she's kind of putting things together, and her and the bodyguard sit down, and they go into even deeper exposition. And the counterpart exposition between the Bidens and this lady, Jazz, it drags it. I mean, if the stuff they're talking about is all news to you, you might find it interesting, or if you're looking for confirmation of what you already kind of knew about Hunter, then yeah, then you'll probably find it interesting. But it really doesn't pull off well. They attempt a few scenes and where they're essentially using essentially it's surreal, where essentially they have a scene to tell, and it's like, okay, well, we don't have a big budget to do this in a way. So like you'll have like a handful of people in the background in a weird pose, and while the two Bidens are up telling their story of what's going on, and it's yeah, it does feel surreal, but it's not the good kind of surreal. It's not the one where you go, "Oh, wow, that's really well set up." It's just like, okay, yeah, budget cuts, get it. You get through here, and really some ham-handed stuff where Joe Biden's on the phone and he's hearing about how essentially the media is covering up for the whole laptop thing for them, and very clearly goes, "Oh, thanks, Nancy. Really appreciate you doing it." It's like he's talking to Nancy Pelosi on the phone. So, it's red meat stuff for the right. They would have been a lot better not trying to implicate everybody they possibly could with this. So, the remainder of the movie is a bit of a slog to get through, and I definitely was playing solitaire in the corner, watching the end part of the movie. Uh, so Gina Carano's in there, and what they do is they have at least two characters whose job is to act as kind of a narrator, fish out of water. So Gina Carano is kind of Secret Service, and her so she's in and out of scenes, and when something needs further exposition, which there's a lot of this, she goes and delivers it. She does a pretty decent job doing her part. They don't, because the character she's playing is not a lot of range, and she's deliberately breaking the fourth wall. She's talking to you, the audience. Whereas the stripper, she's the fish out of water. She's there. Oh, I don't have any idea what's going on. Tell me what's going on. So she's there to be the part of the audience who doesn't know all the story and to ask all the questions in order to get the backfill to get you up to speed. So, in terms of just talking about it as a movie, like I said, guy who plays Hunter in the first third of the movie does a fantastic job. Hope to see him in more stuff. Uh, I'd say in general, the acting was decent. I mean, other than I think Joe Biden is the only character who really doesn't fit. But again, that may not be the actor's fault. Um, if you're just looking for something purely entertaining and you're not looking to learn, the first third of the movie is worth a watch. It's actually really well done. Um, if you're just looking at it as entertainment or looking at its artistic merit, it's worth a peek. You could actually learn stuff from it. The rest of the movie, not so much. So, if we were to look at it just purely politically, because obviously this is an example of a movie trying to deliver a message rather than trying to tell a story, and that's where they screw up. And this is probably a good example of, well, it's pretty close to a fact that the left can't meme. Well, the right has a hard time making movies on the flip side, so there you are. And this is an example of the right trying a little bit too hard. Now, if I were to execute this movie, I would have embraced that beginning part that they did, essentially making Hunter uh, kind of the hero of the story, but a hero kind of being dragged through something that he doesn't want. And the making the audience feel empathetic to him is brilliant on almost a Machiavellian level. I mean, it if they would have followed through with that, it would have been absolute pure genius. Essentially, when they put him with Joe Biden, at that point, he becomes a farcical comic type being, and then inexplicably transforms into uh, the evil villain, where suddenly somehow he's kind of got his crap back together and they're working their way through the various things that are going on. So, so I would have done is the first third of the movie, I would have done exactly the way they did it. And then when it gets to the part where you need to find out what's going on um, with Joe Biden talking to Hunter Biden, I mean, you can throw in Joe Biden's foibles, his gaffing, but it would actually make him far more sinister, and I think that's what you would actually want to go for by making him the mastermind in control without these occasional subtle gaffes jumping in and out to let you know he's kind of slipping. And that would actually make him more frightening. And I think that would have been a much better way to play that part. Um, I don't know how to deal with all the exposition in the movie. They would have probably been better off acting out a lot of it. They could have used the laptop as let's say at some point. Let's say we have maybe either the computer shop owner or the FBI, or I believe even at one point Rudy Giuliani is in control of some of those laptops, where you could have parts there where they're viewing stuff that's on the laptop and you briefly kind of show what's going on and say, okay, this is really what was on the laptop. This is the real Hunter Biden, and then kind of morph it into um, flashback scene and then act it out to where you can see, you can put the actors in those positions and have them act out these positions or act out what was going on. That would be probably a really good way of running the movie, and at the same time, throughout, keep Hunter in the position of the guy who just had the world dumped on his shoulders and is just fighting to do what he can for his family the way he understands the way he's supposed to be doing things. Um, so I guess in the end, artistically, yeah, the first part of the movie is worth a watch. I mean, if you're the type who's even thinking of if you're a writer, if you're doing your own movies, it's worth a watch to see what they're doing there because they actually pull it off really well. Uh, and maybe the rest of it could be used as a lesson. And then, of course, If you already know all the stuff that went on, uh, you could watch this just to basically fill in gaps that you may not have been aware of. Uh, if you're kind of completely in the dark because this was a story that was kind of dropped, uh, it could be worth a watch, but you have to understand it was written from a writer's perspective. So what happens is they're uh, they are making certain assumptions that they're not necessarily backing up in the movie. So it would be good, like, to take notes and say, okay, look at this, look at this, look at this, and try to see if the things that they're asserting actually have real world backup on some of it. Because obviously, there's areas that are gaps, and they chose to take the most salacious route in terms of, or the most over the top route to fill in these gaps. So I think it detracts from the general flow of what they're actually trying to do in terms of uh, informing the public. They're trying to, obviously the goal of this movie is to deliver a message, and I think they kind of fall flat on that. Um, but okay, if you're not interested in Hunter Biden, then you're not going to like this movie at all. It probably isn't worth your time. Um, if it's something where you're kind of going, well, maybe I kind of should know about it. As a documentary, if you're just basically to treat it, the facts they're giving you to you as a form of documentary, it's a slightly more entertaining documentary because they're acting it out rather than just having someone stare at you and tell you what's going on. So it would be probably the most concise group of information you could get, and it would probably be a little bit more entertaining than trying to dig it up through other sources. But again, you might want to keep an open mind on the areas that are filler, so that you're looking at, oh my god, what's going on here, and it's like, well, we don't know that particular part happened. So uh, you might want to check to see if is this something that actually showed up on the laptop, is this something that was intimated in emails, or is this something that's just the writers having a good time in interpreting a gap they wanted to fill to get the story to move from one spot to the other. Okay, so I think that covers the movie. Uh, so if you like the visit video, please like. If you have comments on it, comment. Frequently do answer your comments. And if you have a particularly meaty comment, sometimes I do videos based on the comments. If there's somebody you think would find this useful, share it with them. And if you like what you're seeing, consider subscribing to the channel. I put out content probably 4 to 5 times a week, maybe a little bit more if the times line up well for me. But generally, no, not quite daily. All right, well, I appreciate you spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you again in a future video.